What is the scariest thing that is unexplained by science? Story 1. Mental illness. My paranoia stems from my ignorance of this mental disorder. Edit. I'm currently in my mid 20s, and I showed signs of schizophrenia in my early adulthood that may indicate its onset. Also, I've studied every single article about pharmaceutical drug therapy for neurological illnesses since I'm a research scientist who focuses on this field. I get that this might not be terrifying for certain people, those over the age of 30 who have never had a mental health issue. But I find this very horrifying. Story 2. Can something like a wormhole form inside a black hole? Is it infinitely gravitational or does it simply terminate? Nothing about wormholes is similar to a black hole. According to what others have said, a black hole is simply a very dense ball of matter. I'm not sure, but I think I've heard that if all the matter on Earth were compressed to a black hole's density, it would be roughly 3 centimeters across. The enormous mass of a black hole is the sole reason for its enormous gravitational attraction. However, it does not absorb all substances. We would continue our current orbit around a black hole of the same mass that now serves as the Sun. The converse is true of wormholes, which are holes in space-time. Since space isn't flat, it should be possible to go quickly between any two spots you press together. Story 3. All of space. But not only our cosmos, all of reality. Seriously though, you can go one of two ways. Nothing existed before the Great Bang. Think about nothing for a whole minute. Not possible. The idea is so foreign to me that it annoys my head. What if there was actually nothing? Surely the cosmos couldn't have happened. No rationale, absolutely zero data to work with. Prior to the Big Bang, there existed an entity. But this is not leading anywhere. It simply delays the question even more. What came before that? I would like to know what came before that, if anything exists. Just considering it is insane. Story 4. All of these dimensions are completely foreign to our minds, which immediately renders our capacity to comprehend the true nature of anything to zero. It is possible that each of us contains an endless galaxy of space and energy, but it may not exist in the XYZ dimensions that we are familiar with and can quantify, nor in the time that we only have a vague idea of how to measure. The fact that certain individuals like Nikola Tesla assert that they were able to draw thoughts and energy from unknown sources makes it even more bizarre. Maybe the explanation for all of humanity's marvels, dreaming, producing, thinking, etc., lies in the other 90% of our brain's power, which we presumably only utilize 10% of. All we can say is that we have a very limited grasp of the subject. This is exactly the kind of thinking that walks the tightrope between wonder and existential vertigo. And I love it. You've hit on a few massive ideas all at once. Extra dimensions, the limits of human perception, Tesla's wild energy theories, and that infamous we only use 10% of our brain myth, which, to be fair, is more metaphor than science, but still makes a compelling point about our untapped potential. Story 5, actually, the vast majority of things. Our frantic state becomes more apparent as one delves deeper into scientific education, particularly in fields such as physics. The scientific community is always being humbled by the enormity and complexity of reality, despite its members' arrogance and desire to know everything. So, scientists may give the impression that they know everything. I'm not trying to discredit science here. In fact, scientists do know more than the average person about the subject. But in reality, they are completely confused. It is quite amusing to observe how we try to pretend to know things by using jargon. Examples of this include the concepts of dark matter and dark energy, which we have no idea what they are, but have given names that suggest we do. There is no proof that dark energy exists, and the same holds true for dark matter, albeit in a more indirect manner. Something that has surfaced in the fields of biology and neuroscience in recent years is my favorite illustration of science clinging to tenuous concepts like this. Consciousness is most likely an emergent quality of the brain. Thinking like that is like stating consciousness is most likely the sun god Ra. Clever, but ultimately meaningless. Since we still don't have an idea as to what consciousness is, it suggests that we know a lot more than we actually do, but it lacks any true scientific foundation. Though it's entirely conceivable that the assertion is completely without merit at the moment, it is predicated on the present obsession with emergent features. There is no actual science in the statement, although it does utilize scientific language. While the existence of an emergency is undeniable, there is currently no evidence to suggest that our consciousness is connected to it. While it certainly merits further examination, the current state of affairs renders such an explanation no more compelling than a more spiritual or religious one. These mysteries will likely be solved by science in due time, but for the time being, we are light years, if not centuries, from having any idea what they are, particularly consciousness. Story 6, the mechanics of riding a bike. Not the working parts, but the ability to ride them steadily and perform stunts, such as leaning to one side or doing insane tricks without losing our balance and falling off. Gravity is supposed to do one thing, but for some reason, it doesn't. Therefore, these contraptions are quite paradoxical. Be aware that I'm relying on a hazy recollection of a TV program I caught the halfway point of around a year ago, so there is likely an explanation, but I'm too lazy to go find it right now. Put me in my place, or out of my place, or whatever. Story 7. How is it that something could exist out of nothing at all? The Big Bang and other explanations for the passage of time provide a perplexing picture of the nature of existence. I don't understand how either nothing or something could exist. Yes, it isn't. Furthermore, time cannot exist without a beginning and an end. It can neither exist without a before nor an after, but neither can time exist without either. Existence should be impossible, but it should also be impossible for existence not to be impossible. It's hard to put it into words, but existence really makes no sense. It's obvious if you look beyond the Big Bang or beyond the concept of existence. I'm not trying to sound smart or woke, but this is objectively true. You literally can't prove me wrong, and there's no reason for anything. Why does existence exist? Why do we live? Why do we feel emotion? Why does life or space exist? It shouldn't, but it shouldn't not. And when I say the Big Bang is a lazy explanation for existence, I'm not trying to say it's inaccurate like one of the fake moon landing idiots, but how can something come out of nothing? Does nothing really exist? Where does the possibility of being come from? It possesses the ability to do what it cannot. I may be going on a bit here, but if you stop to consider it, nothing makes any sense. This could be because the very idea of sense is illogical, being a product of the human mind. If everything is a concept, then nothing can be truly meaningless. But since meaning itself is a concept, the idea of meaningless itself is illogical. My point is that nothing makes any sense at all. Story 9. Mostly everything, to be honest. We have never known more in the history of our species. However, every fact or theory that we discover or develop generally leads to multiple new questions. I only studied physics, but within that alone, there does not exist a single discipline which is complete. Even the ones which we think have been exhaustively explored are just temporarily put to one side because they are considered good enough for the moment. There are a lot of big questions being shown as examples in this thread, which are amazing to think about, but it is the small questions which I always find an amazing display of our beautiful ignorance. For example, why does a can of Coke fizz up when you shake it? There are some thermodynamic theories being thrown around, but the numbers don't really work out. Smart people have tried. You can begin arguments about non-classical heterogeneous nucleation, helping to fill in the gaps. But when you get to that stage, you realize the insane complexity which exists even in those things is trivial. The beauties and mysteries of the universe are not just confined to the limits of the cosmos. Most of us have a few currently lurking in our fridges. Story 10. How gravity manages to work with the other three fundamental forces of nature, electromagnetism and the strong and weak nuclear forces. The last three are modeled by quantum field theory, in particular the Standard Model, which is extremely successful for predicting the behavior of elementary particles. Gravity is modeled very well by Einstein's general relativity. However, these two theories seem to be mutually incompatible, and there's no known consistent theory that would incorporate all fundamental forces. Story 11, I want to add the sailing stones. They aren't a mystery anymore, but are a perfect example to show that most mysteries have a logical explanation. We just haven't found it. They are small boulders that move by themselves. They are too heavy to be moved by the wind. They leave a clear track of their trajectory, and there aren't any footprints or evidence of someone doing it. What is moving them? The sailing stone happens in an arid desert close to a mountain that gets snow in winter. During spring, the snows melt and the water reaches the desert. This water is not a giant wave, it is just a few inches of water that slowly crosses the desert. The small current slowly moves the stone, but is not strong enough to delete the heavy track. There's even a video of it somewhere. Story 12, Where the Hell Does the Devil's Hole Go? That's an interview with the diver who did it. Two people dove into the Devil's Hole and were never seen again. During the recovery dive, the diver found a fin and a dive light, but not the bodies. At about 300 to 350 feet, the tube of Devil's Hole opened up into a large cavern. The diver was already pushing safety limits and breaking records, so he did not continue to explore and find out how far it went. He did, however, let out wire that he claims equaled the depth he had already dove without hitting the bottom, although he also says that he felt a current tugging on it, which is somehow even scarier. The hole obviously connects to some kind of underground aquifer, but how extensive it is not known. Devil's Hole actually has a higher salinity than the ocean, so it is unlikely they are connected. So, what the hell is going on? We have no clue. Edit. An idea that I want to address, because whenever Devil's Hole gets mentioned, it gets brought up. Why not send a drone or sub down there? Well, first, there's an endemic species of fish that lives only in the hole, so we don't want to do anything that could potentially interfere with them. Second, you can't wirelessly transmit through water. This means cabling is required. Cabling that would require protection from the crushing pressure, salinity, and sharp edges of the initial cave, all while maintaining a high amount of control over the submersible itself. Due to the alkaline nature of the water, any small leak would ruin the cable's transmission. The shielding and machinery of the ROV itself would be physically huge, and some of the passages are tight. Add this to the fact that you would have to haul everything to the middle of the Nevada desert. It's doable, but money. Lots of money. No one would be willing to dump money into this. Story 13, Ball Lightning. Ball lightning is an unexplained atmospheric electrical phenomenon. The term refers to reports of luminous spherical objects which vary from pea-size to several meters in diameter. Though usually associated with thunderstorms, it lasts considerably longer than the split-second flash of a lightning bolt. Many early reports say that the ball eventually explodes, sometimes with fatal consequences, leaving behind the odor of sulfur. Holy, I read about someone who's seen one. They're extremely rare. He described it as something almost religious. I can understand him. But it comes to show that we don't understand everything, and that we should just accept the fact that there's things that can happen that are 100% natural but maybe very, very rare, and we can't explain it in more detail than that. We can't study it. Ball lightning is one of those phenomena that sits right at the edge of science and mystery, a glowing, drifting orb that defies our best efforts to understand or replicate it. It feels like something out of folklore or science fiction, but hundreds of credible witnesses over centuries have described eerily similar events. Floating spheres of light that sometimes vanish silently and sometimes explode violently. What makes it so fascinating is exactly what you said. We can't predict it, can't summon it in a lab reliably, and yet it's so viscerally real for the people who've seen it. It's like nature's reminder that we're not done learning, that the world still holds moments of wonder, terror, and awe that escape tidy explanations. Story 14, Sleep Paralysis. I watched a documentary on Netflix about it, called The Nightmare. I didn't really know anything about the condition, but after watching this, not only was I far more educated and sympathetic, but also completely terrified to go to bed. As someone with a childhood and adulthood, if I'm to be honest, fear of aliens, I was so not prepared for this film. I have chronic sleep paralysis, and one thing I can add is that you never get used to it. Sometimes I see terrifying stuff. And other times there is awful stabbing pain in my back like someone is digging in my back with a crowbar. Sometimes it's less painful like a hand on my neck resting there and I can't turn around or move. Story 15, Sky King, do not answer. Sky King is a code word for a special order EAM, Emergency Action Message, usually for the deployment or launch orders for nuclear weapons. The receiving stations are usually ICBM launch control facilities across the US and probably B-52 standby bombers. A little bit about GCHFS, Global Communication High Frequency System, and EAMs. Oh, and those are not pre-recorded. That is a live real-time human you're hearing broadcast that message. And on the other end of it are live real-time humans decoding the message and then going into a secure lockbox to authenticate the code and follow a set of launch instructions. Pray that one day you don't hear an actual non-exercise message. Skyking messages are special EAMs. These presumably could be the nuclear go no go codes. There was a higher than normal number of EAMs and Skyking messages being transmitted after the attacks of 9/11. Urgent Skyking messages are repeated 3 or 4 times instead of the usual 2. Skyking is a group call sign, meaning any this net. Do not answer is the standard procedure of self-authenticating broadcasts, meaning that recipients don't need to give away their positions or existence by challenging the orders. While tuned to any of the GHFS frequencies and hear Sky King do not answer, you can bet you're hearing a very important, highest priority, and heavily encrypted message. Story 16, the Bermuda Triangle. Yes, there is new information that the mysterious disappearances of ships and planes in that spot could be weather-related. There is evidence that the Bermuda Triangle is prone to air bombs. These are caused by blasts of air that come down out of the bottom of a cloud and then hit the ocean. This creates waves that can sometimes be really huge, but I still find it fascinating. I've heard compared to other sea areas, there aren't that many more wrecks there than any other place. That and the fact that more planes and ships go through that area than any other place in the world. So it could be normal for there to be that many wrecks based on how much traffic there is in that area. Story 18, Bigfoot sightings have been reported on occasion by eyewitnesses across the United States for many years. These creatures are big, hairy, and resemble humans. There must be thousands of Bigfoot for there to be a reproductive population. Yet so far, no remains have been discovered. Nobody has perished due to natural reasons, being hit by a speeding car, or being slain by a hunter. When indisputable proof, such as teeth or bones, is lacking, the burden of proof falls on eyewitness accounts and sometimes confusing visual documentation. Given the impossibility of proving a universal negative, scientists will never be able to rule out the possibility that Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster exist, and it's plausible that these enigmatic beings hide from curious onlookers. Take a look at our full Bigfoot story and accuse us of being skeptical. Bigfoot is the perfect blend of folklore, biology, and mystery. Just enough anecdotal evidence to keep hope alive, and just enough scientific skepticism to keep it out of textbooks. You're absolutely right. For a species like Bigfoot to exist, we'd expect more than blurry trail cam photos. We'd expect remains, roadkill, hair samples, a jawbone something, and yet, people keep seeing it. Across decades, across regions. Some accounts are laughable, sure, but others come from people who seem genuinely rattled, even credible. That's what keeps the legend alive. It's not proof, but it's persistent. Story 19, whatever you want to call it, intuition, a sixth sense, or just plain old gut feelings, everyone has felt it. While intuition isn't always correct, think about all the times you were convinced your plane was going down during turbulence. It usually seems to be correct. People seem to sense or know knowledge without knowing exactly how or why we know it, according to psychologists, since we subconsciously pick up information about the environment around us. Unfortunately, it's not easy to verify or analyze situations of intuition, and it's possible that psychology isn't the whole story. You would be correct if you assumed that the following slide will address the topic of disappearances without a trace. Story 20. People disappear for various reasons. Most are runaways, some succumb to accident, a few are abducted or killed, but most are eventually found. Not so with the truly mysterious disappearances. From the crew of the Marie Celeste to Jimmy Hoffa, Amelia Earhart, and Natalie Holloway, some people seem to have vanished without a trace. When missing persons are found, it is always through police work, confession, or accident, never by psychic detectives. But when the evidence is lacking and leads are lost, even police and forensic science can't always solve the crime. One word about our next slide, boo. Story 21, ancestral beings have always been a part of human culture and mythology, from Macbeth by Shakespeare to Medium on NBC. A lot of people have claimed to have seen ghosts, both of persons they knew and of those who have passed on. Sincere eyewitnesses persist in reporting, seeing, photographing, and even talking with spirits, even if conclusive evidence for their existence is still elusive. The ultimate goal of ghost hunters is to dispel the enigma by demonstrating that the dead can communicate with the living. Psyches have nothing to do with our next enigma. Psyches have nothing to do with our next enigma. Hold on a second. It seems like I've read that elsewhere before. Story 22. Paranormal experiences such as entering a dark tunnel and coming out into light, seeing loved ones again, feeling at peace, etc. Described by people who have been near death can provide evidence of a life beyond death. Although having such a profound experience is remarkable, nobody has come back with evidence or substantiated knowledge from beyond the grave. Some people think the experiences could be explained as the predictable and natural hallucinations of a brain that has been traumatized. Researchers in 2015 discovered that during cardiac arrest, the brain sends signals to the heart, telling it to keep beating so that it can survive. Researchers have speculated that the jumble of impulses could be the cause of NDEs. Story 23. If only because of the widespread belief in them, psychic abilities and extrasensory perception, ESP, are among the top 10 unexplained phenomena. See #3 for more on the widespread belief that intuition is a psychic ability that grants one access to hidden or esoteric wisdom regarding the present and future. In controlled scientific settings, researchers have investigated those who assert to possess psychic abilities, but the outcomes have been either inconclusive or negative. Some have contended that psychic abilities are either untestable or, at the very least, less potent when scientists and skeptics are there. If this is so, the possibility of psychic abilities will remain unproven by scientific inquiry. Psychic abilities and ESP walk that fascinating tightrope between belief and science. Embraced by millions, yet still elusive under the microscope, there's something universally compelling about the idea that we might have hidden senses buried deep in our minds that could tap into something beyond space and time. And while controlled experiments usually turn up nothing repeatable, people still swear by their experiences. The eerily accurate dreams, the gut feelings that saved them, the flashes of knowing something they shouldn't know. Story 24. Researchers in the medical field are just scratching the surface of what the mind can do to affect physical health. For instance, the placebo effect shows that sometimes people can alleviate medical symptoms or pain only by thinking the treatments are successful, regardless of whether they actually are. The remarkable capacity of the human body to mend itself through mechanisms that are only partially understood surpasses the capabilities of any medical advancement. Therefore, although there are several unexplained phenomena, and to be honest, some of them are questionable, the science of the mind and body, which is explainable, though we still have a long way to go, may be one of the most astounding phenomena of all. Story 25. The Black-Eyed Children Phenomenon. Black-eyed children, also called black-eyed kids, BKs, are entities described in countless chilling accounts, predominantly in urban legends, paranormal forums, and first-hand testimonies. Despite lacking scientific verification, the consistency of the narratives has left this phenomenon shrouded in eerie mystery. Encounters with black-eyed children typically follow a similar unsettling pattern. Appearance. Usually aged between 6 and 16, these children have completely black eyes. No white sclera, no discernible iris, just solid darkness. Witnesses describe them as pale, expressionless, and oddly dressed, sometimes wearing outdated or inappropriate clothing for the weather. Behavior. BX are said to approach individuals, often at night, asking for help or permission to enter a home or vehicle. Their requests frequently include statements like, "Can we come inside? We need to use your phone. We're lost. Can you help us?" Sense of dread. Witnesses universally report feeling an intense, unnatural fear or dread even before noticing their pitch black eyes.